Welcome back to Afro Asia Diaries. Before we start, drop a comment and tell us where in the world you're watching from tonight. And if you're new here, hit subscribe. Now let's begin. Adiz Obi had exactly $4,000 in her account and a sister back in Lagos who needed $12,000 to walk again. She did the maths in her head so often it had stopped feeling like numbers and started feeling like a countdown clock, ticking somewhere behind her ribs while she worked double shifts at Seoul General, changing 4 bags for old men who called her the Black Nurse, like she didn't have a name tag. She was 28. She had been in Korea for 3 years. She still dreamed in Igbo sometimes, and woke up homesick for a country she'd left because there was nothing left there for her but her sister's hospital bills. So when the man in the black coat found her outside the hospital gates on a Tuesday night, rain needling down under the streetlights, she thought at first he was lost. "Adiz Obi," he said. Not a question. She stopped walking. "Do I know you?" "No." He held out a folder, thin, black, expensive-looking, the kind of folder that never held good news. "But I know you send $700 home every month. I know your sister's name is Ngozi. I know the surgery she needs costs more than you'll save in 4 years." Her stomach dropped somewhere near her shoes. "Who are you?" "My name is Yoon Taesung. I work for a man named Choi Jun-ho." He said the name like it should mean something, and when her face stayed blank, something like relief crossed his. "Good. You don't know him. That makes this easier." "Easier for what?" "He needs a wife. For 1 year, maybe less. You sign, you wear a ring, you smile in some photographs. In exchange, your sister's surgery is paid for. All of it. Tonight if you want." Adiz almost laughed. It came out broken, more air than sound. "You think I'm going to marry a stranger because you say so?" "I think," Yoon said not unkindly, "that you've been awake for 19 hours and somewhere in Lagos your sister is in a chair she hates, and you have exactly $4,300 to your name. I think you'll say yes before the week is out." He was right, and she hated him for it. She met Choi Jun-ho 4 days later in a penthouse so quiet it felt like a held breath. He didn't stand when she walked in. He didn't smile. He was younger than she expected, maybe 32, with a face that might have been kind once before something carved it into something else. "You understand the terms," he said. "Not a greeting. I understand you're buying me." Something flickered behind his eyes, gone before she could name it. "I'm not buying you. I'm paying you. There's a difference even if you don't believe that yet." "And what exactly am I being paid to do?" "Exist. Wear my ring. Sit beside me at my father's memorial dinner in 3 weeks so my cousin doesn't take 14 years of my father's work and burn it to the ground." His jaw tightened on the word father. "You will have your own room. Your own life mostly. I will not touch you. I don't want a wife, Miss Obi. I want a signature." She should have felt relieved. Instead, something in the flat, rehearsed way he said it made her chest ache in a way she didn't understand yet, like she'd walked into a room where someone else's grief still hung in the air, old and unaired out. "Fine," she said. "When do I sign?" For the first time he looked directly at her, really looked, and for one unguarded second she saw something underneath the ice. Something tired, something drowning. "Tonight," he said. "Before either of us changes our mind." She didn't know yet that his hands shook when he signed his own name. She didn't know about the woman whose photograph he kept face down in his desk drawer, or why he flinched when wedding bells played on the radio. She only knew that when their fingers brushed, passing the pen between them, neither of them let go right away. The wedding was small, cold, and fast. A courthouse, 6 witnesses, a photographer paid to make 4 strangers in a room look like a fairy tale for the newspapers. Adiz wore white because Yoon told her to. Jun-ho wore black like he was going to a funeral instead of a wedding, and maybe she thought later he was. She moved into the penthouse that night. He showed her to a room down the hall from his own, far enough that she had to wonder if the distance was intentional. "My room is there," he said, pointing without looking at her. "Yours is here. There's a lock. Use it if it makes you comfortable." "Would I need to?" "No." His voice was flat, final. "I told you. I won't touch you." She believed him. That was the strange part. She believed him completely, and it should have felt like relief, but instead it felt like being handed a room with no windows. The first 2 weeks they were strangers who shared a kitchen. He left before she woke. He came home after she'd gone to bed, if he came home at all. The only sign he existed was a note sometimes, left on the counter in sharp, slanted handwriting. "Dinner in the fridge if you want it." Like he couldn't bring himself to say the words out loud but couldn't stop himself from leaving them either. Then one night she found him in the kitchen at 2 a.m., not sleeping, just standing in the dark with a glass of water he wasn't drinking. "Can't sleep?" she asked, because the silence felt too big to leave alone. He looked at her like he'd forgotten another person lived there. Something like that. She should have gone back to bed. Instead she pulled out a stool and sat, and after a moment so did he, and they sat there in the dark not talking, and somehow that felt like more of a conversation than most conversations she'd had in years. "Tell me something true," she said finally. "Not for the cameras. Not for your cousin. Just something true." He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "I haven't slept a full night in 3 years, he said. "Since Seo Yun died." The name landed in the room like something breaking. She didn't ask who. She didn't need to. The way he said it told her everything. The way a person says a name they've stopped letting themselves say out loud. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it. "Don't be. It's not a story for a wife I bought." But his voice cracked on the word bought just slightly, just enough that she heard the lie in it. It became a habit, those 2 a.m. kitchen hours. Small things at first. He told her he hated coffee but drank it anyway because his father had. She told him about Ngozi, about the sound of her sister's laugh before the accident that took the use of her legs, about the guilt of building a life in Seoul while her family waited for wire transfers instead of visits. One night, without meaning to, she made him laugh. A real one, surprised out of him, quick and rusty like a door that hadn't opened in years. He looked almost frightened by the sound of it, like he'd caught himself doing something forbidden. "What?" she asked, smiling despite herself. "Nothing." He shook his head, but he was still half smiling, and it changed his whole face, made him look like someone she hadn't met yet. "It's just been a long time since someone did that." Adiz looked away first because something in her chest had gone warm and dangerous, and she wasn't ready to name what it was. She didn't know that down the hall, in a drawer he never opened anymore, a photograph lay face down, gathering dust, and that for the first time in 3 years, Junho hadn't thought about it once all night. The memorial dinner arrived faster than either of them wanted. Adiz stood in front of the mirror in a dress Yoon had sent over, deep emerald, sharp at the shoulders, the kind of dress that made her stand taller just wearing it. She barely recognized herself. 3 months ago she'd been changing 4 bags and scrubs that smelled like antiseptic. Tonight she was about to walk into a room full of men who killed people for a living, wearing her husband's ring. Junho knocked once and let himself in before she answered, then stopped in the doorway like he'd forgotten how to move. "You look..." He stopped himself, cleared his throat, tried again with less feeling in his voice, like he was correcting a mistake. "You'll do fine tonight. Just stay close to me." "That's not what you were going to say." Something almost like a smile ghosted across his mouth. "No. It wasn't." He didn't finish the thought. But he offered her his arm at the door, and when she took it, his hand found hers properly, fingers laced through fingers, and neither of them mentioned that it wasn't part of the performance. The dinner was exactly as tense as she'd feared. Junho's cousin, a sharp-featured man named Han Diyun, watched them all night with the patient, hungry look of someone counting the days until something breaks. He raised his glass at one point, smiling with only his mouth. "A foreign wife," he said loud enough for the table. "How progressive of you, cousin. Your father must be rolling." The room went quiet. Adiz felt Junho's hand tighten around hers under the table, not painfully, protectively, like he was bracing both of them. "My father," Junho said, voice level as a blade, "chose the family. I choose mine. Careful how you speak about her, Dune." The word hit Adiz somewhere she wasn't prepared for, somewhere underneath the fear, underneath the performance. She kept her face composed. She did not know if he'd meant it the way it sounded or if it was simply the role. She wasn't sure which answer scared her more. They didn't speak in the car on the way home. But back at the penthouse, standing by the window with the city spread out gold and glittering below them, Junho finally broke the silence. He'll come for the company again. No. Tonight made him nervous, and nervous men make mistakes. He rubbed a hand over his face, and for a moment he looked less like a mafia boss and more like a man who hadn't slept properly in years, which was exactly what he was. I shouldn't have said what I said in there. Why not? Because it wasn't part of the arrangement. He turned to face her, and the space between them had gotten smaller without either of them deciding it should. None of this was part of the arrangement, Adiz. The kitchen. The talking. This. Then why does it keep happening? He didn't answer with words. He reached up slow, like he was giving her every chance to step back, and brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers grazing her cheek. Her breath caught somewhere in her throat. The city lights blurred gold behind him. For one long, suspended second, his eyes dropped to her mouth and hers dropped to his, and the distance between them was nothing, was inches, was the loudest silence she'd ever stood inside. Then his phone rang, sharp and sudden, shattering the moment into pieces. He stepped back like he'd been burned. Answered it. His face went pale as he listened. What happened? Adiz asked, heart still hammering from what almost was. Junho's hand tightened around the phone. Dion's men were spotted outside the hospital. Seoul General. His eyes met hers, dark with something that wasn't desire anymore. It was fear. Adiz, that's where you work. Adiz didn't remember the drive to the hospital. She remembered Junho's hand gripping the wheel too tight, his knuckles pale, his jaw working like he was holding back words he didn't trust himself to say. I'm fine, she kept saying, though he hadn't asked. I wasn't even on shift tonight, they can't. They weren't there for a shift schedule, he cut in, voice low. They were there to send me a message. And the message is that nothing I care about is safe. Not even you. Not even you. She turned to look at him, but his eyes stayed fixed on the road, and she couldn't tell if he'd meant to say it, or if it had simply slipped out of a man too tired to keep guarding every door in himself. By the time they arrived, Yoon had already secured the building. No one was hurt. A security guard had chased off 2 men loitering near the staff entrance, asking questions about a Nigerian nurse's schedule. That was all. That was enough. Adiz sat on a gurney in an empty exam room while a colleague checked her over out of habit more than necessity, and Junho stood by the door, arms crossed, refusing to leave, refusing to sit, refusing to look anything other than furious and afraid in equal terrible measure. When they were finally alone, she broke the silence first. You should tell me the truth. All of it. Not the version you give reporters. He was quiet a long time. Long enough that she thought he'd refuse, the way he always had. Her name was Seo Yun, he said finally, sitting down heavily in the plastic chair across from her, elbows on his knees, staring at his own hands like they belonged to someone else. We were supposed to get married. 3 years ago, my father's rivals firebombed a restaurant to send him a message. She was inside, waiting for me. I was 11 minutes late. Adiz's chest ached like something physical. Junho. I've run the numbers 1,000 times, he went on, voice flat, rehearsed from repetition. If I'd left the meeting when I said I would. If I'd taken the other road. 11 minutes. That's all it would have taken to save her, and I couldn't give her 11 minutes. That wasn't your fault. Everyone says that. He finally looked up and his eyes were wet and raw and more honest than she'd ever seen them. No one's ever made me believe it. She reached over and took his hand, both of hers wrapped around his one, and didn't let go even when he tensed like he wanted to pull away out of habit, out of guilt, out of 3 years of believing he didn't deserve the comfort. I'm not her, Adiz said quietly. I'm not trying to replace anything. But I'm here and I'm not 11 minutes late. I'm right here, Junho. Something in him broke, quiet and private, no dramatic tears, just a long shuddering breath like a wall coming down brick by brick. He turned his hand over in hers and held on. They didn't kiss that night. It wasn't the moment for it. Too raw, too fragile, the air still full of grief and fear. But when he walked her to her door at the penthouse, he didn't stop at the doorway like he always did. Adiz. Her name in his mouth had started to sound different lately. Less like an arrangement, more like something he meant. I need you to know this isn't about the company anymore. It stopped being about the company weeks ago. I know, she whispered. Dune is going to come after you to get to me. I should send you somewhere safe. Somewhere far from this life. Her heart dropped. Is that what you want? He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, close enough that the space between their mouths felt like the only unfinished sentence in the world. His hand came up to cup her jaw, thumb brushing her cheekbone, and this time no phone rang. This time there was nothing to stop the slow, certain closing of the distance between them, his forehead resting against hers first, breath mingling, both of them trembling on the edge of something neither could take back. No, he murmured, barely a sound at all. That is the last thing I want. And then he kissed her, soft at first like a question, then deeper when she answered it, one hand sliding into her hair, the other pulling her against him like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. She kissed him back with everything she'd been holding since the night in the kitchen, since mine at the dinner table, since 11 minutes that haunted a man who'd finally let someone else count the seconds with him. Neither of them heard the car pull up outside. Neither of them saw Diyun's men watching from the street below, cataloging exactly how much Choi Junho now had left to lose. Morning came too fast, and with it Yoon's voice on the phone, tight with something Adiz hadn't heard from him before. Panic. They took the surgery clinic's records, Yoon said when Junho put him on speaker. The one in Lagos. Ngozi's file, her surgery date, her location. Diyun found the one thing that isn't protected by your money, Junho. He found her sister. Adiz's whole body went cold. The world tilted just slightly the way it had the night Yoon first found her outside the hospital with that black folder. They can't, she said, though even as she said it she knew Diyun's men could do whatever they wanted, wherever they wanted, and had already proven it. She's in Lagos. She's not part of this. She's part of it the moment she matters to you, Junho said grimly, already pulling his phone back to make calls, already becoming the man she'd first met in that too-quiet penthouse. Cold, fast, dangerous. Yoon, get her on a flight tonight. Private, not commercial, nobody logs her name anywhere. I want 2 men on her door within the hour. For the first time since the wedding, Adiz watched him work, watched the machinery of his world move at his command, and understood fully what kind of man she'd married, and that right now all of it was being spent protecting her family. The next 48 hours blurred into phone calls, security briefings, and a fear that sat in Adiz's stomach like a stone. Ngozi arrived in Seoul on a stretcher, confused and furious, and underneath it quietly grateful, tucked away in a private hospital wing Junho owned outright. Diyun made his move on the 3rd night, not with guns but with the board, calling an emergency vote to contest the inheritance, claiming Junho's marriage was a fraud arranged for money, not love. He nearly had them. He had photographs of Yoon's first visit to Adiz outside the hospital, the blackmail folder, everything. What he didn't have was what happened after. Junho stood before the board, Adiz beside him, and didn't deny how it started. Yes, he said, voice steady, it began as an arrangement. I won't insult this room by pretending otherwise. His hand found Adiz. But ask her sister what this marriage paid for. Ask me why I haven't slept in another room in a month. Ask my cousin why he's so desperate to prove something that's no longer a lie. The room went silent. Diyun's face went the color of old paper. It wasn't the declaration that won the vote. It was the way Junho said it. No performance left in it at all. They stood on the balcony that night, the city gold and endless below them, Ngozi resting safely 2 floors down, Diyun's claim buried under a boardroom's unanimous no. I never planned this, Adiz said softly. Any of it. Neither did I. Junho turned her gently to face him, tucking a loose braid behind her ear, his thumb lingering at her jaw the way it did now, like he still couldn't quite believe he was allowed to. I spent 3 years being 11 minutes late for everyone I loved. I promised myself I wouldn't let anyone close enough to be late for again. And now I think I was just waiting for someone worth being on time for. His forehead dropped to hers, unhurried this time, no phone about to ring, no cousin about to burst through a door. I love you, Adiz Obi. Not the arrangement. Not the wife on paper. You. I love you too, she whispered against his mouth, and when he kissed her this time, There was nothing transactional left in either of them. Only two people who had found each other by accident and chosen finally to stay. If you made it this far, let us know in the comments. Did you see that ending coming? Subscribe to Afro Asia Diaries for more stories like this one, and tell us where you're watching from tonight. We'll see you in the next story.